if it's in the name of preventing injuries, then it's good and I feel good about it. And a saying that my father always used to give us when I was young, he didn't like people just, the kids especially, sitting around doing nothing. So he would say, get outside and do something, even if it's wrong. and that phrase stuck with me over the years, and I ask now, though, why would I want to commit valuable resources to something, some activity, even if it's wrong? In fact, one of the organizations where I did research in this area was committing as much as 1/3 of their available resources to preventing injuries. 1/3. More than that, 36%. And they were not getting any benefit out of that beyond what they were getting in terms of reduction in injuries, beyond spending about 15 to 17% of their resources. In an organization of 400 people at the time, man, I would want to know that, so I could take that 15 or 16% of my available resources and commit them to something more productive. And we'll see what that looks like here. But the health and safety organizations around the world have not, for the most part, designed and done engineering of their systems. So usually the designs have been made just because we are trying to conform to government legislation and other guidelines. Usually it's been a reactive approach every time there's an incident, and hopefully we prevent the future incident. So how do we know? How do we measure the effectiveness? Well, we're going to talk about that, but there's two schools of thought that I have run across out there in the safety world with leading indicators and lagging indicators. You may have engaged in discussions around that very topic. The lagging indicator, the main driver traditionally has been that incident rate, that incident number. That's considered to be lagging. It's after the fact. There is the group of people that say, we've got to get rid of that idea. We have to focus on proactively on the leading indicators. My proposal here is that we understand how the two of them are mathematically related. If we have a mathematical relationship and we can define that, then we have something that we can manipulate to make our health and safety management system efficient. We can design it to produce an outcome that's more expected. So, what does it really mean to measure the effectiveness? I said earlier that we can't really count how many injuries don't happen, but we can count how many have reduced from the last time we counted, or how many have we increased. That's a change. Change is what we're able to measure. So there's more research needed. I have been digging into this problem through my research for the last 20 years. The answer is it's quite elusive, but it's getting closer. So what does that look like? We have a representation here of what you might call is a management system with all of the intervention activity grouped into 4 categories here. These are the input variables on the left side of the diagram, and they feed into a loss prevention system, and something happens. Something happens with the way we're implementing them, and then there is an incident rate that comes out the other end. Okay, so this is a typical input-output model. If we understand the changes in the input and how it's changing, and then over time how the output changes and how they relate to each other, that gives us our mathematical relationship between leading and lagging indicators. And so what that looks like, and this is a representation of, in every case, and it's very intuitive, in every case where we've done this research, the result between the amount of resources applied to preventing injuries and the incident rate on the y-axis as a dependent variable, this declining exponential relationship is what has occurred. each time. Very predictable, very intuitive. So now we want to find that point where it's no longer effective or efficient to start to keep putting more resources to preventing injuries. So when we don't, see if I can, yeah, we can't see the arrow on there. If we don't if we can define that point where the curve starts to flatten out, then we have that point where our process is efficient. That should be the good enough point, because it doesn't buy you much to continue to apply resources to those intervention activities. So that blue circle there is what we're looking for. So we have to define what is that safe enough region. That can only be defined by you and your organization. However, if you have this capability, if you do what it takes to gather the data and get this information, then you can easily define that. And you can predict the outcome. Now, it's not to say this is the equation that you will get. I just want to show you that an equation does develop. It's rather complex because there's so many things that we're doing. But we have been improving this model over the last 20 years. And some of the results that we see, this has been simplified a little bit more. We've added a couple of categories. And there's a term that we just can't get rid of at the end. We call it experimental error. It's that part of the model that we can't explain. And we've been trying to shrink that over the years. And that is because so many things go on in our heads, in our behavior, in our activities of our workforce, that there isn't any way to get 100% predictability. But we have been improving this, and this is a representation of the model where the dark blue line, or the light blue line, is what we estimated the incident rate to be through the model, and the dark blue is what actually happened, what actually occurred. So we can't explain all of the variation, but the model tracks pretty closely, so it can be done. And this is sort of a plea for us all to be looking at this so that we don't waste 36% of our available resources when 15 or 16 is going to get us to our goals. So we've even built an interface to go along with it where you can actually enter your own data each week for how much time and what quality of effort is going into those interventions. And we produce an estimated incident rate out the other side. And as you can see in the upper right corner, the term called R squared, that's sort of a number that represents how much of the variation in the incident rate we can explain. In this case, it's 68% for this particular model. That doesn't sound very good if you come from the fields that are driven by natural science and physical law, but that's pretty good for humans. That's saying instead of feel-good sense of reason or gut feel, that's saying we can at least be 68% sure that whatever we decide to implement as part of our health and safety management system, we're 68% sure that it will have an effect and it will work to lower the incident rate. So we've done a few more things just so you can see this a little better visually. A couple of different types of functions, and please don't even look at the equation necessarily. I wanted to take you through that step though, just so you can you know that it can be done. And the results of the equations here that give us what's called a surface response shows us in 3-dimension what actually results in that equation. And what that's saying is the incident rate is in the y-axis, and 2 of those categories of interventions are compared in the other. And so what that's telling us between the one category and the other, up in the upper right corner, is that the best application of our resources is right in the middle of that circle. That's the lowest point. That's the lowest incident rate that we can achieve given those implementations. And then the same in the other one with a comparison of 2 of the other activities or interventions. So we've done a lot of different comparisons like that. And if you have this, you can get this kind of information on your processes, you can make much more informed decisions than what we have done over the years traditionally. And I can tell you too that I know full well what we're up against, because that incident rate and that quest for zero has been at the forefront of my brain for a long time, and it's been so unscientifically arrived upon that this whole area of study, and we can actually put costs to each of these as well to do our cost analysis. It has been a frustration driver for me to try to get to this point. So we have the statistical analysis capability. We know now with the management systems that are coming that we can systematically categorize the activities, and we can more systematically manage them to numbers that now are coming from actual data rather than that feel-good sense of reason. So there are quite a few comparisons. Now, there's a lot of publications that we've developed over the last 20 years on this, and I'll have them at the end here in just a few minutes, so that any of you can access them. Maybe unfortunately they're all in English, but at least you know there's a resource that can help guide you through this process if, in fact, you think there is something here that you'd like to try. But what we have to do, I think, next, for any of you that would like to pursue this, is define your loss prevention system. For the most part, it's coming with ISO 45000 and core safety and others like those. You'll have that capability to define what it looks like. Define the elements within that. And you'd begin to manage that loss prevention system like any other management system. Safety's not different. Safety is no different than any other activity that we engage with in business. There's I speak from, we'll say, the other side of the fence. That's another area that I engage is productivity. Those two have competed for years, and they don't have to. Safety safety and loss prevention are just the way in which we run the business. So we want to make sure that that's done. But if you collect the data is what's going to drive this on quantity, quality, and cost for all of the resources that you allocate towards loss prevention or what you invest. You can make those kinds of economic comparisons. You can make those kinds of analyses that will tell you not only which resource is having an effect, but how much of an effect. Is it giving you enough that you'll want to keep investing money? And one example of another study that we did was a behavior observation program that was being implemented off the coast of West Africa. This organization was really emphasizing the behavioral observation program, and their people on this offshore platform would make as many as 350 observations in a week. That's a lot. That's a lot of man hours. Takes the person 15 minutes that's doing the observation, then the two of them, the observer and observee, take another 15 minutes afterwards to talk about the results. There's a lot of man hours that goes into 350 observations. There was no difference in the outcome in terms of injuries, contractor injuries, near misses, and unplanned upsets than when they were doing 75 observations a week. Why would I want to spend those resources on observations if there was no difference? That's a question that we asked the superintendent. And he said, well, the guys like it. They decided to continue because the guys like it. And I think that's one of the things that, that safety has suffered from, and why it's been had such a difficult time sort of wedging its way in the business activities, because there is that humanitarian aspect of it. And we can't avoid it, but we can at least try to make it as much of an engineered system as we possibly can. So I just wanted to, and these, I'm not sure if these slides are being made available to you, but I'll certainly send them to, if not, I'll send them to anyone that would like the slides. Yes, they're all in English, but for the most part, you see all the resources that have been developed, the scientific journal articles over the years that have been written around this topic. And there are many now that it's this far along. So it's a little bit early, but that's the message that I have. So we have plenty of time for questions if we have questions.
Sentado, por isso.